Welcome in, everyone, to the It's Official podcast, created by Jeff Siegel, proudly hosted by Jeremy Plonk, representing First Bet and Express Bet. And it's time to take on 5 hot topics for the final time in 2026 as the new year 2025, as the 2026 new year is right around the corner coming up this week. So we finish things up a lot of the ways that we start with our Goosebump Award, the horse who got us most excited, got us out of our seat last week. Well, one happened on the track and one happened off the track, and it was the same connections involved. Sovereignty, the Kentucky Derby, Belmont, and Travers Stakes winner, announced this weekend. He didn't announce, but his connections did, that he'll be back for a 4-year-old campaign in 2026. How long that campaign is, we don't know. Of course, owned by Godolphin, with major interest in the Dubai World Cup in their home ruling country. So you would expect the Dubai World Cup to be high on the list for Sovereignty. Would he get a start at a prep in the U.S. before that? We shall see, but he will return to training in late January, I believe, and we will see Sovereignty as a 4-year-old, knock on wood. Of course, he was supposed to end his campaign as a 3-year-old in the Breeders' Cup Classic. We'll talk more about that race in a moment, but he missed the Breeders' Cup Classic with reportedly a fever. Thoughts were he may go to stud, he may come back at 4. We've been kind of on pins and needles and waiting since Halloween to know whether or not we would see Sovereignty as a 4-year-old. Story came this weekend that we will indeed. But that wasn't the only news that Belmont and Godolphin made last week. They had the Goosebump Award winner on the racetrack as well. His name was Knightsbridge, and he prepped for what potentially could be a date in the Pegasus World Cup with a dominant win in the Mr. Prospector.
Alvarado lets out just a notch on Knightsbridge to maintain a narrow lead. Wound-ups in the middle. Super Chow working harder on the outside, but Knightsbridge appears to have things well in control. 3/16 to go, and it's Knightsbridge, an eighth of a mile out. Now asked to do some work by Junior Alvarado, and he hasn't won. Second is Super Chow. Third is Wound Up, but the class of the son of Nyquist, Knightsbridge, wins the Mr. Prospector. Gear down in the end, 4 lengths to the good from Super Chow second. Wound Up third. Great Navigator wins the
Final 3 furlongs of that 7/8 of a mile in a swift 36-2. Really nice finish there for Knightsbridge. Now, he's won 4 of 6 in a stop-and-start career. Kind of reminiscent a little bit of Cody's Wish, another Godolphin Belmont charge. This is a horse in the Mr. Prospector, Knightsbridge, who got his first stakes win in his 6th career start. Cody's Wish took 7 starts to make his first stakes victory, and his trip to the winner's circle there would springboard him to a 2-time Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile campaign in his career, and also Horse of the Year honors. So will this horse have more of a career coming forth like a Cody's Wish in a season like Cody's Wish? Knightsbridge has that kind of talent. Or will it be more like a Belmont horse, like a Hidden Scroll, who showed flashes of brilliance, but when he got to the highest levels, just simply wasn't that kind of horse? There's kind of 2 different ways Knightsbridge could go from here, but I think if we see him stretch out in the Pegasus World Cup, he would be a serious factor in that race. Knightsbridge is by Nyquist out of a Bernardini mare. Yes, this was 7/8 of a mile, but this was kind of a sprint to route prep, if you will. 2 sprints in a route. That old handicapping style, that form cycle that Jeff Siegel loves so much, and he taught so often in this space here on our podcast. The 2 sprints to a route. Well, Knightsbridge off the layoff came back in November, won a sprint allowance race. Now he just won the sprint in the Mr. Prospector. He is set to route now, and I think we're going to see him in the Pegasus World Cup. Can't wait to see Knightsbridge and what he does next. I think he's got a better shot of being a Cody's Wish than he does a horse like Hidden Scroll. I think there's a lot of talent here with Knightsbridge, so very much looking forward to seeing him next. Of course, White Abarrio, a Breeders' Cup Classic winner from the past, was going to prep in this race, but scratched out of the Mr. Prospector and will go straight into the Pegasus World Cup simply on works if he's able to get up to the race, but Connection's not happy with the way he trained into the Mr. Prospector. So White Abarrio, some news coming out of that Mr. Prospector Stakes, still online perhaps for the Pegasus World Cup, at least verbally they say so, but we'll see physically if he can get them to that point. Another horse you might look at for a Pegasus World Cup or another race in some big parts of the world, Saudi, Dubai, Santa Anita Handicap, is Go Oriented. He won the Malibu Stakes to cap his 3-year-old season, cut back from 2 turns to 1 and won that 7/8 of a mile race. Go Oriented was kind of my other horse when you look at the Goosebump Award, but 7/8 of a mile and 120 and change. He went lightning fast. He certainly could have been in that discussion, but for me, Knightsbridge stole the weekend. I loved his performance in the Mr. Prospector, and I like where he's headed. Our Goosebump Award winner this week, Knightsbridge for Godolphin and Belmont. Our second topic this week as we go through the end of the year. We're going to talk race of the year next up. You could have went back to the spring and the big matchup in Saudi Arabia. Remember the Saudi Cup back in February where it was Romantic Warrior, the richest horse in the world, the horse who had dominated the scene in Hong Kong for years, going head-to-head with Japan's star Forever Young. What a throwdown they had at the end of the Saudi Cup. This could have been the race of the year had it been on American soil, but from a simulcast player and a national and international audience, I don't know if we saw a better throwdown. It's not going to be the race of the year, but it's going to be a close second.
Romantic Warrior, who finds most initially from Forever Young in second place. The two of them are clear from Wilson to Soro and Factor Cheval, two of the great racehorses in the world. And at the moment, Romantic Warrior holds sway. His rider looks across. Forever Young is trying to close and is beginning to do so. Romantic Warrior from the outside. Forever Young has got to within 3 parts of a length. Romantic Warrior, Forever Young, a race for the ages, and Forever Young rounds off a terrific night for Japan, runs down Romantic Warrior and breaks Hong Kong.
How strong was that race? It was a bounce next time out for Forever Young when he was defeated in the Dubai World Cup, but he wouldn't lose again the rest of the season. A season that concluded with what I say is the race of the year. The Breeders' Cup Classic at Del Mar, race of the year this year. It's not always the race of the year. You would think it would be, but this year, I don't think there's any disputing it. The top 3 finishers from the 2024 Breeders' Cup Classic were all back. Sierra Leone, Fierceness, Forever Young. Not only those 3 for the first time ever back in a rematch in the Breeders' Cup Classic, they did it again. They ran 1, 2, 3 while shuffling the deck. And behind them were some outstanding horses, including the 3-year-olds Baeza and also Journalism, winner of the Preakness Stakes. Let's go back, gate to wire, the race of the year for 2025, the Breeders' Cup Classic at Del Mar.
No. They're off in the Breeders' Cup Classic. Baeza was off to a slow beginning. Fierceness goes out to the early lead and runs straight today and straight to the front. Contrary Thinking now moves up alongside of him, and Contrary Thinking will take the lead. Forever Young is close. He's right there on the outside, and Fierceness is down toward the rail. Then comes Mind Frame and Antiquarian. Journalism is guided inside by Jose Ortiz. Nevada Beach is along the rail. Baeza is second last, leading only last year's winner Sierra Leone. Has the opening quarter mile in 23.04 seconds. Contrary Thinking out there doing his job. He's in front by 2 lengths. Ever Young on the outside of Fierceness, second and third. Break of 2 to Nevada Beach, who's down toward the rail. Mind Frame on the far outside. Journalism between those 2, just 4 from the front. Antiquarian, and it's 3 back to Sierra Leone and Baeza. 45.97 was the half mile. With 5 furlongs to run, Contrary Thinking leads the field up the Breeders' Cup Classic in front by a half a length. With Forever Young right alongside. Mind Frame just to the outside of them, makes it 3 in a line. Fierceness just in behind with Journalism to his outside. Then Nevada Beach, Baeza, Sierra Leone between them, and Antiquarian is the trailer. Around the far turn, Forever Young pokes his head in front. Mind Frame, and now Journalism confronts them. As Contrary Thinking drops back, Baeza is 4 wide. Fierceness in behind horses. Sierra Leone is right in contention too, as they make their way to the top of the stretch. And they're into the stretch in the Breeders' Cup Classic. And Forever Young turns for home with the lead. Journalism is second. Sierra Leone, Fierceness, 1 off the rail. Still Forever Young to catch. Fierceness is coming. Sierra Leone and Journalism, they're coming to the finish. And it is Forever Young. Celebrate Japan! They won the Breeders' Cup Classic.
Around the world, it was hard to deny Forever Young in 2025, winner of the Breeders' Cup Classic, defeating the defending champ Sierra Leone, the former Breeders' Cup winner of the Juvenile and 2-time placed horse in the Classic in their Fierceness, a good third this year in the Breeders' Cup Classic, and of course, 4th for Journalism. He ran his race in there, just simply wasn't as good as the older horses at the end of his 3-year-old campaign. As we look ahead to 2026, Forever Young should be back for a 5-year-old season, according to his connections. It could start in Saudi Arabia once again. A short campaign, you would think Saudi Cup, Dubai World Cup, 1 prep somewhere along the way in Japan after a long layoff like they did this year, and then perhaps to the Breeders' Cup Classic at Keeneland. Maybe a 4-start campaign, maybe a 3-start 3 to 4 start campaign, probably what we can expect out of Forever Young as a 5-year-old. Knock on wood if we get that, because really that would be something to see. What a fun horse he's been since just missing in the Kentucky Derby 2 years ago, just missing in the Breeders' Cup Classic a year ago, and getting the job done this fall at Del Mar. As for Journalism, the 3-year-old in there who was best of the sophomores who were left at the end of the year for the Breeders' Cup Classic, he will be back for a 4-year-old campaign. Michael McCarthy reporting that he'll rejoin his barn at the end of January here in Southern California. So looking forward to seeing Journalism back and forth. Baeza's not on the work tab right now, but he's expected to run as a 4-year-old as well. So some good 3-year-olds turning 4 here in a couple days. Looking forward to seeing those horses next year. And again, we could see Forever Young back here stateside one more time. What a treat that would be. Race of the year, the 2025 Breeders' Cup Classic. The Churchill Downs Handicap run on the undercard Derby weekend. The race won by Mindframe. Nisos was in there. Really an outstanding race. Bookham Dano. Between sprinters and routers, maybe the most interesting race of the year. And 4 or 5 of them hit the wire together. Banishing and company, I believe, were in that race as well. Churchill Downs Handicap got a lot of consideration for race of the year from me. But when Mindframe is running behind all these horses in the Breeders' Cup Classic, and the 1, 2, 3 from the Classic last year come back and make up the trifecta once again, it has to be the Breeders' Cup Classic as race of the year for 2025. Let's continue our annual superlatives list. Jockey of the year. This is really a 2-person discussion when you talk about it. Irad Ortiz has kind of had a stranglehold on the top over the last 5-6 years in American racing, to be sure. Multiple Eclipse Awards in tow for him. He's leading the country in wins. He's leading the country in earnings right now. But Flavien Prat makes a very strong case to be the outstanding jockey of 2025. I don't know who the pollsters, I don't have a vote for the Eclipse Award, are going to vote for. But for my money, give me Flavien Prat. There is a little bit of discrepancy in the stats, and you can make some discussions one way or another. Right now, with a day left in 2025, it's 351 wins on the year for Irad Ortiz, 320 for Prat. So Irad does have 30 more wins. That's, a significant number. He has $10.4 million, $40.4 million in earnings, 40.3 for Pratt. So again, Ortiz has more money won by $100,000, very, very close there. More victories by about 30, close margin there, but fairly significant. But the difference is Flavien Prat has 400 less mounts. 400 more mounts for Irad Ortiz than Flavien Prat. And here's a couple other reasons why I think it's about Flavien Prat when you talk about the Jockey of the Year in 2025. How about 13 Grade 1 wins for Flavien Prat and where he got them? 3 in Kentucky, 5 in California, 4 in New York, and 1 north of the border at Woodbine. So 13 Grade 1 wins this year for Flavien Prat. 9 of them for Irad Ortiz. Excellent season, but Prat, I think those 4 additional Grade 1 wins really say something. And when you look in New York specifically, this kind of blew my mind when I went through the BetMix database. But in NYRA races, Saratoga and Aqueduct this year, where the Belmont at Aqueduct meet, or Saratoga at Belmont at Aqueduct, however you want to spell NYRA racing for 2025, Irad Ortiz 0 for 22 in Grade 1 stakes in New York this year. Unbelievable. And he only had 1 second-place finish from those 22 mounts. Now, Flavien Prat had 25 mounts in those races. He won 4, was second 6 times, and third 3 times. 10 out of 25 for Flavien Prat in the exacta and Grade 1 stakes races in New York, many times riding head-to-head against Irad Ortiz. Irad Ortiz 1 for 22 in the exacta in Grade 1s in New York. Flavien Prat, 10 for 25 in the exacta in New York in Grade 1 stakes. To me, that tips the scale. Jockey of the Year, Flavien Prat, and one of his big wins in New York this year came in the Whitney at Saratoga aboard the late-running Sierra Leone.
He is right behind White Barrio as the field turns for home. Fierceness is the one to catch. He has a 3-length lead. Sierra Leone down the center of the track is coming with powerful strides, and Highland Falls is in there too. But it's Sierra Leone who takes the lead from last to first. Highland Falls trying his best. Sierra Leone has won the Whitney. Highland Falls was second. Disarm finished third. White up.
Never an easy ride on Sierra Leone, not just his running style, but his ability or inability to stay straight sometimes and bear in. Not an easy horse to be the co-pilot for, but Flavien Prat figured him out for sure on Whitney Day. One of his Grade 1 wins in New York, 13 Grade 1 wins overall in the season this year. four of them coming on the NYRA circuit, one of those being that Whitney Stakes for Flavien Prat. For me, he's the Jockey of the Year for 2025. Let's see what the Eclipse Award voters do come January. Now we've got one more topic to talk about in terms of the annual year-end review, and this is certainly from a gambling standpoint, the topic of the year, CAWs, computer-assisted wagering. It's been prevalent in horse racing for the last several years, but I think it hit a crescendo in terms of public awareness, public dissatisfaction, and a public revolt to have something done about computer-assisted wagering in horse racing. There's not a lot that we can say about the computer-assisted horse wagering that you don't already see on a daily basis. The late odds drops, the inefficiencies in the pools being removed. I mean, the pools are so much more efficient than they used to be. You don't see the overlays. Everything's covered. Some combinations that you don't expect, covered. Some horses that you may not expect, covered. The computers do a fantastic job with their algorithm in identifying the best way to get close to even. And that's what they're trying to do with their rebates to grind out a big time profit. For us as horse players and spot players trying to find those have become more difficult. No question about it in this era of call wagering. And really, it's kind of hit a crescendo this year and became one of the major talked about panels at the Global Symposium on Racing at the University of Arizona's racetrack industry programs annual symposium, where they talked about the call wagering, whether it was Marshall Graham or track management, and the host Pat Cummings, who's done a lot of research on the topic from his days in Hong Kong and here in the U.S. There was a lot of discussion. There were a lot of talking points. They were trying to maybe dismiss some of the myths and the realities of call wagering. I'm not so sure that panel checked a lot of those boxes. I think maybe viewers left those panels as undecided or unimpressed by the explanations as the ones that they did get. I mean, you know what you see with your eyes, and there are some explanations behind the scenes that we don't get necessarily as horse players. And even as somebody who's been in the racing game for 30 years, I'm not privy to some of the inside information that goes to it. It is very much under lock and key, if you will. We don't get a lot of topical discussion about it in the open. And so we're left to speculate. And then when we're left to speculate and the public discussion that comes out like that happened at the Arizona Symposium doesn't satisfy you, doesn't quench your thirst for the amount of information. We want to know more. We want to know what can be done. I know the topic of discussion about cutting off at particular minutes to post and things like that took the headline away at the end of the symposium. But to me, that was a marketing play. And really, that's not a major satisfaction when it comes to horse players playing against the CAWs, you know. So there's got to be more discussion in 2026 as we move forward. But the topic of call wagering in 2025, to me, is the topic of the year, bar anything else. I know there are other major topics, and we talk about things like horse safety, and we talk about retirement, and we talk about the viability of racetracks as standalones and not with casino operations, the head-to-head competition that comes now with sports betting. All these things are important, but to me, the call wagering is the one that for the average, what we call retail player, the player who isn't a computer-assisted wager player, and by definition, a computer-assisted call wager is one that can make more than 6 wagers per second. That's one of the things we learned from that discussion in the Arizona Symposium. So unless you're betting 6 wagers per second, you are not considered a computer-assisted wagerer. So a retail player like you and I and almost everybody watching this podcast really is kind of up against the algorithms, up against the speed and the efficiency in which those computers can operate. The legality of them, there are some challenges and lawsuits that are being bandied about right now from horse players. One in particular lawsuit that is out there that's being talked about in the racing press will be interesting to see what kind of rulings or any kind of discovery that comes about in 2026 from that. I don't have a strong enough opinion on one side or the other to make some declarative statement out there to tell you should think this or you should think that. But I know this, we need to keep talking about it, and we need it to be out there as a topic so that we can flush it out and figure out what we do as horse players to play against what is a very tremendous machine, poor pun intended. Call wagering, to me, the topic of 2025, bar none in horse racing. The wagers fund everything in this game, and the more of them who feel like they don't have a fighting chance, the more difficult it is to move forward as a racing industry. That's my thought on that topic. Let's go to our fifth and final this week on the It's Official podcast, the Stars of Tomorrow. We wrap up each podcast with this, a horse who maybe was a 2-year-old, a lightly raced 3-year-old, coming out of the maiden ranks and announcing their candidacy that they've got a big future. Well, we had one of those this past week at Gulfstream Park. $700,000 debut half-brother to Caddo River. His name was Waymark, trained by Brad Cox. This looks like a 3-year-old to watch.
And they're on their way home. 45-4 for the opening half mile. Waymark striding with a purpose. He's an eighth of a mile out, now 2.5 on top. Second is High Camp. The rest left in their wake. Final 16th of a mile. Waymark, the son of Liam's Map. He's a bit green, but he's doing plenty. It's Waymark at 3-2. He's in front. High Camp with a great try second, working well clear of Kingsworth.
6-1, 10-4 for Waymark. With that pedigree, you expect him to go a little farther. A middle distance horse we saw with Caddo River made it all the way to the Arkansas Derby as a runner-up as a 3-year-old. Caddo River, his half-brother, earned over $800,000. Waymark, a lot to like here, a $700,000 son of Liam's Map, and again, a half-brother to Caddo River. The Dam Pangburn, she was a good stakes winner, grade 2 places, become a pretty good broodmare as well. Honorable mention this week for a horse who we looked at as a potential as our Star of Tomorrow, Class President for Todd Pletcher, a homebred for Windstar Farm, a debut winner. I would think that we're going to see in a prep somewhere down the line both Waymark and Class President, 2 horses that won last week at Gulfstream Park, in some of these 3-year-old to come preps. But they closed out their 2-year-old seasons in style with nice victories in maiden races last week at Gulfstream Park. Let's review our topics this week on the It's Official podcast. The Goosebump Award this week. We shared it. We got excited because Sovereignty's coming back as a 4-year-old. But on the track, it was Sovereignty's stablemate for Godolphin and Bill Mott. Knightsbridge winning the Mr. Prospector in hand. 7 furlongs wire to wire with a good come-home time. He got our Goosebump Award. Knightsbridge, one to watch here into his 5-year-old season now. The race of the year, the Breeders' Cup Classic, when the last year's top 3 in the Breeders' Cup Classic all made historic comeback against each other in this year's 2025 edition and delivered with another 1-2-3 performance. We had to make that the race of the year. Even without Sovereignty, it was an outstanding race, won by Forever Young, who also won the Saudi Cup in one of the most exciting races of the year. We looked at that one as well when he beat Romantic Warrior, the star from Hong Kong. Jockey of the year, good two-way discussion between Irad Ortiz Jr. and Flavian Pratt, but the grade 1 scale tips to Flavian Pratt. The grade 1 scale in New York really tilts to Flavian Pratt. That's why I think he's your Jockey of the Year for 2024 or 2025. Our topic of the year in terms of news and wagering, the call wagering hit a boiling point this year. Public perception faced off with some racing management, if you will, at the Arizona Symposium. We got some answers, but not enough to quench the thirst. This is a topic that we're going to be talking about because it is so important as we move into 2026. And finally, our Star of Tomorrow was Waymark, $700,000 son of Liam's Map for trainer Brad Cox, half brother to Arkansas Derby runner-up Caddo River, an $800,000 earner. Waymark on his way, perhaps, to the Derby Trail. Those 5 topics are now official because the show's creator and our handicapper emeritus, Jeff Siegel, and I say so. That will wrap up this edition of the It's Official podcast and some news and programming notes about the podcast. This will be the final edition of the It's Official podcast, not going away, but we're going to put this one to bed. Jeff and I started this show several years back, and when Jeff got sick in February and then passed away here in the fall, I wanted to keep the show going in his honor throughout the course of the year. But doing it as a one-person operation really is a different kind of deal than what the conversation and the debate show that we wanted to do with It's Official really stood for. So I'm not going to continue to do it with myself, and I'm not going to bring in another partner to do the It's Official podcast because, frankly, you're not replacing Jeff Siegel, and I wouldn't want to put that responsibility on anyone. But we will be back in 2026 with our First Call podcast on Fridays each and every week where we handicap weekend stakes races. And I can promise you there's another podcast in the works. It's going to be a lot of fun talking with a potential co-host right now. And early in 2026 in January, we're hoping to get things underway with a new and entertaining show for you that'll take this weekly time slot, if you will, something for early in the week, a Monday, Tuesday kind of show. But it won't be the It's Official podcast. It'll be a little different and it'll have its new own identity and support behind it. So on behalf of everybody who's watched this It's Official podcast for all these years, I certainly do appreciate it. Rest in peace, my brother in heaven right now, Jeff Siegel. I loved being along this journey with you for all this time, and certainly love you and miss you. And thank you for getting this show going and rolling as we did and had so much fun with it. I'll be back on Friday, as we mentioned, after the first of the year, do some handicapping for the weekend. And again, stay tuned to all of our different channels at Horse Player Now, at First Bet, at Express Bet, and we'll give you news on the new podcast that'll kick off in January 2026. Until then, Happy New Year, everybody, and we'll talk to you soon.